Big games from Andrew Vaughn and Seby Zavala as the White Sox put up 11 runs on the Angels. Lucas Giolito went 7 innings and kept Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout in the ballpark. Every White Sox starter had at least one hit except for Tim Anderson.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome back to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong die-hard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTV. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our Chicago White Sox take on the Los Angeles Angels on Thursday, series finale. Lance Lynn is on the mound. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with Sirius XM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. How about our White Sox? State of the Sox. They are now 35-47, 5.5 games back in the AL Central. Again, 35-47, just 5.5 games back in the AL Central. White Sox, man, they took care of business Wednesday night, 11-5. It's just odd how this White Sox team sometimes just explodes for runs and hits, and everybody gets in. Well, almost everybody gets in on the action. It has been a while, at least it has felt like a while. Sox needed this type of game. Gio allowed his typical type of runs in an outing, but was able to go 7 innings. Offense absolutely exploded, and they started the scoring very early. Big games from Andrew Vaughn and Seby Zavala. Luis Robert Jr. hit his 23rd home run. Vaughn with his team leading 49 RBI. Full details later on in the episode. So before it became Seby Zavala night in Chicago and anywhere else there are White Sox fans, it was Connor Bedard night in Chicago and anywhere else where there are Blackhawks fans. I'm a passive Chicago Blackhawks fan. Of course, I was really into it when they had their run with the Stanley Cups, and with doing Locked On White Sox, I mean, I am all in and have been for the Chicago White Sox. And I haven't paid too much attention to the Blackhawks over the last couple of years. But, of course, a huge deal, the opportunity to draft Connor Bedard, bring him into the organization. And from everything that I hear from folks in the know, just a generational talent that is coming to the West Side, to the Madhouse on Madison. So I was wondering, trying to put a White Sox spin on things before the game. Has there been a White Sox-related comparison? Some guy that we have just, we knew it was coming, to our ball club, and it was going to change absolutely everything. And, I initially, I put this question out to Twitter, and I got some great responses. I think some folks that are definitely piped in on the NHL world far more than I have been. And some folks said, look, there just isn't a comparison with the way, draft picks are and drafting is with hockey compared to MLB prospects. And fair enough. I was thinking about Yoan Moncada, when he was brought in is really the huge centerpiece in that trade for Chris Sale. I think it was the ESPN magazine spread, and back in 2016, just like the number one prospect in the world. This guy is going to be a can't miss baseball phenom. And the anticipation of when he was going to make his debut. And I was there for the game, as I'm sure a lot of folks were. Lots of just anticipation. This was going to change things for the White Sox moving forward. He was the first one, to arrive, and then all these other names we started hearing about, and there were more to come that summer. But I mean, he got a standing ovation. Yoan Moncada did. For drawing a walk in his first at bat. And then obviously what we're dealing with now with Yoan Moncada, a lot of folks weighed in on Luis Robert Jr., and that was huge. We heard some news, some rumors that this might go down, and what kind of player Luis Robert Jr. could be. And we've definitely seen it, haven't we, this season? It has been just amazing what he's been able to do when healthy. Hopefully that can be sustained. Frank Thomas, again, like this was before social media, way before social media. So you heard things about what Frank Thomas could be like for the White Sox. And, when he came on strong, and he did not miss a beat. I mean, he was a presence almost immediately for a long time. With the Chicago White Sox. Carlton Fisk, I heard some names, and I think it was 81 when he was brought in. And you've got a guy like Carlton Fisk, a proven veteran with a resume, going to change the way the White Sox have been going. So it's something to believe in, right? It's going to be moving that franchise forward. And look, I didn't attend any of the NHL draft parties on Wednesday night. Saw some videos, saw some pictures. It was obviously extremely intense, electrifying, exciting. The line to get a Connor Bedard jersey after he went number one, it just absolutely insane. It reminded me a little bit of that 2017 White Sox, the Sox Fest. This was obviously just a few months after the Chris Sale trade. The White Sox picked a direction of where they were going to go, and just the excitement. I mean, Rick Hahn received a standing ovation. You had people were wearing those "In Hahn We Trust" T-shirts, and he was lapping it all up. I mean, how could he not? He was finally doing something that we were waiting for the White Sox to do for several years. Pick a lane and just go all in with it. And what he got back, and obviously what we didn't know what was going to happen later in the summer with Aloy and Cease coming to the White Sox. But that there was so much buzz and just, I guess, like general just excitement for the White Sox and what could be in a few years, and packed house, especially for those town halls with Rick Hahn talking. That seems like forever ago. So really about, a player that you can believe in, a cornerstone, and maybe a future leader. There was an interesting article by Daryl Van Scoven of the Chicago Sun-Times recently about the White Sox looking for leaders. Scoven wrote, since the beginning of the season, White Sox assistant hitting coach Chris Johnson has encouraged young position players Andrew Vaughn, Jake Berger, and Gavin Sheets to step up as leaders. With Jose Abreu gone this season and Tim Anderson mired in the worst season of his career, there are voids on that front. Talk to players, and some acknowledge it's lacking, but only to a degree. It's not the reason the Sox are performing badly, but teams that win typically find performance and clubhouse leaders successfully blending together. It's something you work on, said Johnson, who played 8 seasons with 5 teams from 2009 to 2016. When you're a young guy who gets called up, you do your job and stay out of the way. But those guys are at the point where you know what you're doing, how things can be done. Leaders can be any age or service time. Just be a leader. You don't need 15 years in the big leagues. That's what I'm telling them. We have enough leaders in this clubhouse, but sometimes you have conflicting ideas of what leadership is, and sometimes you get conflicting ideas of the way to do things. Liam Hendricks said sometimes that can be an issue, but we don't have that issue with leadership in this clubhouse. Everyone has their own ways of doing things, and sometimes you need to look at it into it as how guys can respond well to certain things. Some guys don't respond well to certain things. Obviously, Jose Abreu was not so much on the vocal side, but just his presence of exuding that leadership, Giolito said. Giolito describes the Sox leadership climate as kind of fluid. I wouldn't say we have full-on leadership designations, he said. Veteran leadership is important, Grifol said. It becomes tough to lead when you are going through adversity. And that last line right there, I think, was directed at a guy like Tim Anderson, who I thought was going to, pick up where Jose Abreu left off, so to speak, the longest tenured Chicago White Sox. And, when he is going through what he is going through right now, I just don't think he can figure anything else out. And people might not be looking for him to do that. It's like, you got to get yourself right. Don't try to get everyone else right and be a leader. And maybe you don't feel confident talking up at all because of what you're going through. But look, I mean, guys like Elvis Andrus, I think Lance Lynn have kind of stepped up in the past. Johnny Cueto from last season. You think a guy like Lucas Giolito, who's been around for a while, I mean, he'd be a guy that, and he's performing pretty well right now. He'd step up. But on Wednesday night, man, Chicago White Sox, they had 17 hits, and Giolito was pretty solid, aside from a couple home runs, but they were not hit by who you might think. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you, with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKDOWNMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Our White Sox face off against the Angels on Thursday. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. Hey, before I jump into the details here, just a programming note. Like a lot of you, I'll be on vacation next week celebrating the 4th of July and will be away from the microphone. So there will not be a new episode on July 3rd, July 4th, and July 5th. I will be back talking White Sox Blue Jays on the 6th of July. All right, Wednesday, it was a wild one for the White Sox offensively. Sox beat the Angels 11-5, action early on, and it came from the players you'd expect. Top of one, Barria on the hill for the Angels. Benintendi with a lead-off walk to kick things off. Tim Anderson could not move him along. He lined out to right field. Then Luis Robert Jr. returned to the spotlight, absolutely massacred a hanging slider straight away to center, 2-0 White Sox. So walks, of course, matter. Getting on base matters. With the way Luis Robert Jr. is going, if you can't get on base, then you can't hit in front of Luis Robert Jr. Eloy and Sheets, they had base hits. The Sox made Barria work. He threw 30 pitches in the inning. Bottom of first, Giolito on the hill, working with an early lead that sometimes can be a blessing or a curse. Got a leadoff strikeout, painted the inside corner, went 2-0 to Ohtani, then a fastball at the top of the zone for a strike. 95 on the outside corner, and it was fouled off. Gio went with a changeup, just kind of hung there in the middle of the zone, and Ohtani was able to take down the right field line. Gavin Sheets struggled with it in the corner. Ohtani had a triple. Then Mike Trout followed up with his own triple over Benintendi's head in left field, 2-1 Sox. Gio got Moustakas on a changeup that was on the outside corner for the second out. Drury ripped a single off a slider that was in the middle of the zone. Angels tied it up. Top of second, Seby Zavala. Yes, Seby Zavala hit a solo home run and a hanging breaking ball. Sox went up 3-2. Benintendi walked for the second time. TA popped out in the infield. Bottom of second, very nice inning for Giolito, 1-2-3. He did not let that previous inning carry over. I mean, the way Giolito goes in the first inning, it's documented. He gives up runs. That is just what he has done in a White Sox uniform. You get that first inning out of the way. Hopefully there's not too much damage, and hopefully you've got the offense, which he did on Wednesday. Top of third, Eloy Jimenez led off the inning with a bomb to left center, 4-2 White Sox. Eloy has struck the ball with authority this series, no doubt about that. Andrew Vaughn followed up with a double. The Sox were all over Barria, not letting him off the hook. Zach Remillard with a 2-out hustle double. Vaughn scored 5-2 White Sox. Bottom three, Giolito versus Ohtani, round two. Fastball, changeup, slider, changeup. Tried to get him upstairs. Count went full. Then struck him out on a perfectly placed slider, bottom of the zone. A very nice sequence. Another 1-2-3 inning for Giolito. He was mixing those eye levels up on Ohtani, absolutely, in that second battle. Top of four, Angels went to the bullpen. Benintendi on base again, this time with a leadoff base hit. Tim Anderson walked. Alert, alert. 2 on, nobody out. Luis Robert Jr. hit a laser to Escobar at third. Angels could not find a force out anywhere, so bases loaded, nobody out. We saw this on Tuesday in the ninth. Eloy struck out. Here we go again. But Andrew Vaughn stepped up, base clearing double. It was 8-2 White Sox. Good to see Vaughn swinging the bat well on Wednesday night. He needed a game like that. Bottom four, Giolito, extremely efficient since the first inning, not giving anything up to the Angels since the 2 runs early on, 53 pitches after 4. Top of 5, Seby Zavala wrapped one around the left field pole for his second home run of the night. 9-2 Sox. TA and Berger were the only starters that did not have a hit at this point in the game for the White Sox. Seby Zavala, first player in White Sox history with more than one multi-home run game out of the 9 spot of the order in a season. That was from Chris Kamka of NBC Sports Chicago. Bottom 6, Gio versus Ohtani, round 3. Gio went upstairs, then tried to get him to chase a slider, mixing eye levels like the previous at-bat. Ended up freezing him on the outside. Second time Gio struck out Ohtani in the game. Bottom 7, Gio at 81 pitches on the arm. Angels lined him up pretty good in the inning. Couple of solo home runs for the Angels. It was 9-4 Sox. Bookends of offense by the Angels during Giolito's outing. Top of 9, it was a 9-5 game. Berger had a double. Remillard with a bunt for a base hit. Remillard absolutely loves bunting. I feel like every time he is in the game, and he's doing it really well. So 2 on, nobody out. Seby with a 2 RBI single, 11-5 Sox. Tim Anderson hit into a double play. Only Sox starter that did not get a hit on Wednesday. Giolito's line, 7 innings, 6 hits, 4 earned runs, 0 walks, 9 strikeouts, and those 2 home runs. His ERA 3.53, not too shabby. 98 pitches thrown. Middleton and Graveman came out of the bullpen. Sox offense, 11 runs, 17 hits, 3 hit nights for Vaughn, Remillard, and Zavala. Vaughn with a 3 RBI night, Zavala with a 4 RBI night. Sox, though, were 4 for 16, believe it or not, with runners in scoring position. Tim Anderson 0 for 5 with a walk. It has got to be a lonely feeling right now for TA as that average hovers around like 220, which is just unreal from where he was a year ago. I don't know when he's going to be dropped from that 2 spot. You know, it took a while, again, for Grifol to finally realize he is not a leadoff hitter right now. And boy, what a job Benintendi has done in the leadoff spot. Especially just getting on base with a guy like Luis Robert Jr., who is on fire. So when is that going to happen? When is TA going to drop further? We'll see. We will see what is going on. It's going to take a beat writer to ask Grifol, what are you doing with Tim Anderson? Grifol will get offended, and then he'll think about it for a couple days. And then he'll say, oh, yeah, maybe we should do that. White Sox, they turn to Lance Lynn to help get the series split. More on that in a moment. On Thursday, it's the series finale, Sox Angels. It's a day game or late afternoon, early evening, however you want to look at it. It's not an 8:38 start local time. It is a 3:07 Central Standard Time start. Lance Lynn on the hill. Lance Lynn has a record of 4-3 with an ERA of 4.22 and 57 strikeouts in 11 appearances against the Angels in his career. Lynn faced the Angels back on May 31st on the south side and was absolutely destroyed by the usual suspects of the Angels. It was really a start you absolutely wanted to forget. Lynn went 4 innings, 8 hits, 8 earned runs, 3 home runs, a couple of walks, and just 4 strikeouts. Lance Lynn has a record of 4-8 with an ERA of 6.40 and 109 strikeouts in 16 appearances this season. Last time we saw Lynn, it was against Boston. His line, 5 2/3, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. White Sox starters, they are taking the ball, you know, no matter where you look at it for the most part. You know, we've got the Clevenger issue, but Cease, Giolito, Lynn, they are taking the ball. Kopech as well. I mean, we're not getting a lot of innings out of Kopech, but White Sox starters, you know, they are making their starts for the most part. And their ERA isn't terrible at all. I mean, it's, you know, White Sox starters are right up there in the top of the league with what they've been able to do. Lynn has come around recently. You know, he's not going to give you those 16 strikeouts that he had against Seattle, but not bad the last couple times. So, you know, what can we get from Lynn? I don't know. Hopefully he has forgotten his last start against the Angels, but here is my worry. And you know what it is with the White Sox putting up 11 runs and 17 hits. So day game now after a night game that saw the Sox score a ton of runs. It's never a good situation for our Sox. I'm wondering if they just used it all up on Wednesday night and just looking ahead to that Oakland series. We'll see what Lynn can do, and we will see what the Sox have for an encore after what they did. And it was impressive on Wednesday. Thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. We're on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and get any questions and comments you have for a future mailbag episode, lockedonsox@gmail.com. Sox take on the Angels on Thursday in the series finale. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. Hey, everydayers, you know who you are, and I do appreciate it. On the next episode, I will recap Lance Lynn's outing and hopefully be talking about a White Sox split. Appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.